To purchase the digital pattern associated with this video, visit my Etsy shop, Raven Write Studio. See the link in my YouTube profile. Welcome to Raven Write Studio. In this instructional video, I will teach you how to make this fantastic bag I call the Sports Duffle. A couple of years ago, my teenage daughter asked me to make a gear bag for her that she could use at her mountain bike races. She even had a sketch she made showing me what she wanted. After lots of designing and one failed bag, this is the final product. It is packed with features. One of the most important things that she wanted was a bag for her helmet. A separate compartment. You can hold your helmet and gloves. Then she needed a large compartment for her other gear. This compartment closes securely with 3 straps, but it also opens up big so that you can get to all of your gear inside. The 2 large zippers make it really easy to get inside. Additionally, I included a small pocket on the inside to hold all your special and small items that could get lost on the inside of the bag. On the other side of the bag are 2 good-sized pockets that have tuck clasps that can hold things that need quick access. The bag has 2 carrying handles, a shoulder strap, and it also is a convertible backpack. Under this cover are 2 backpack straps that can be quickly and easily exposed so that you can carry the bag like a backpack instead of over your shoulder like a duffel bag. Also included in this bag are padding for the straps and also for the shoulder strap. So is padding underneath. I hope you enjoy this bag. It's a little more challenging to make, which is why the video is a bit longer. I show the step-by-step instructions, and it can be done even if you're fairly new to leather making. Begin by going to where you saved the digital pattern in the File Explorer and double-click to open it. It will open in the default PDF reader. You can see that one of the first pages will be a key that shows how all the pages of the pattern join together to make the individual leather parts that we'll be cutting out later. There will also be a hardware or materials list showing you the material that you could choose to use to make the pattern. Following that are all the different pages of the pattern that, when properly cut out and taped together, will be used to make the individual leather pieces that are then sewn or riveted together. That will be shown later. Next, we're going to print. Go to the File on your PDF reader. Click on that, and it will open to where you can click on to print. And in Properties, I recommend selecting black grayscale. You don't want to use all your color ink. Click OK. And then it's very important that under Scale, you select either None or 100%. We don't want to change the size of the image in any way, or it won't work correctly. Then click OK. I use an Epson printer. I like it. It works pretty well. The pattern can be printed out on either A4 or 8.5 by 11 letter size paper. Either size should work. First page is, of course, the key once again, and it shows how all the different individual pages are taped together. Use this key as you go about cutting and taping the pages together. Then there might be a hardware list or materials list, and then the individual pages. So that's kind of how they will go together. But you need to trim the paper so that it fits. So first thing I'm going to do is trim along the dotted line where the individual page has a part that carries across to the next page. And then we go through and cut. And I like to use just a standard masking tape, stick them all together. So this individual piece that I'm putting together goes across 4 different pages. You carefully line it up. And there I also check the scale to make sure that it works correctly. In the corner of each paper is a scale that shows 2 inches or 50 millimeters, so you can check to make sure that your printer printed it correctly. After you've cut out all the different papers and the different pages, you've got the individual parts. And once you've got the parts cut out, then we're going to lay them out and tape them to a leather hide, or whatever piece of leather you're going to use. So we've got the pages cut out. And we didn't cut on the black line yet. We only cut on the white to leave a little bit of the extra of the black line so that we can tape it and then cut on the black line. So I'm going to take all my different pages and take the masking tape again, and you tape it to the leather. Then we take our sharp knife, and at this point we're still not going to cut on the black line. We're going to leave some extra room. We're going to not cut the paper. We're going to cut around the paper so that it stays taped firmly to the leather. And so we'll have the individual parts taped to the leather. And now I'm going to demonstrate how I like to cut straps. So most hides that I buy don't come with a completely straight edge. So I use my long ruler, a meter ruler or a yardstick, and I cut a section at a time, making it sure it's very straight. Then I line it up again. And there's a reason that we're doing this. I'll show in a second that it's important when using a strap cutter to have a completely straight edge. And in this pattern, it's helpful to use a strap cutter because there's many long, thin pieces, and it's easier to use a strap cutter than to individually cut them out. So here I'm measuring the width of the strap to be cut out, or the piece. It may not actually be a strap. This is actually a connector piece between 2 pieces. But because it's long and fairly thin, I set the strap cutter to the width of that piece, and then I use the strap cutter, and it helps me easily cut a long straight piece that's perfectly square and nice and straight on both sides, and the cut is very clean. I'm using a nice sharp blade. And there's lots of different kinds of strap cutters. This is a very economical one that I've got here, and since I bought a couple other ones that are a little more expensive, but they all do about the same job. So now I'm going to use, this is a heavier 5 to 6 ounce veg tan that I'm going to use for actual straps. There are straps that are part of the pattern that include backpack straps, as well as a shoulder strap, and as well as closures. I'm using this heavier, stronger veg tan leather. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and cut a nice straight strip. I'm going to put a nice straight edge on it so that I can use the strap cutter once again. On most leathers, a standard piece of masking tape won't do any harm to it, and it just helps me hold that ruler in place and keep everything really straight. And that's really important when using the strap cutter, that it's extremely straight. As if there's a curve, the strap cutter will follow that curve. So I'm going to use this piece of leather. It's long enough and wide enough, and I'm going to just cut a piece of strap out of it. So I take the pattern to measure the length, and then I just cut it with my sharp knife. And there's a piece of strap. Okay, at this point, I've got all the different pieces laid out, taped down, and ready to go. I've used 2 different kinds of leather. A 3 to 4 ounce leather for all the panels of the bag. It's got quite a soft hand, it's flexible. And then for the different straps and closures, I've used a heavy 5 to 6 ounce leather. That's good for straps and it's extra strong. And it's veg tan, so it will need to be dyed to match. Say hi to my dog. Okay, the next step is to punch all the different holes in the leather. I like to use a tea candle that I've taken out of its little metal holder, and I rub it on all the places where I'm going to punch. You'll see that punching all these holes, there's a fair amount of friction, and this just helps the leather punch go through the paper and the leather and make it clean. On the pattern, there's marks that indicate where each part is attached to another part. I like to use a scratch awl to make some holes where those marks are. Those are individual holes, those particular locations where we start sewing to a different part of the pattern. And if I make a mark on either side of the hole that will be in the stitch line, then you won't see those little tiny pricks once it's all sewn together, but it will give me the right location. So because this is a round curved piece, you can't really use a multi-hole punch. So I'm going to punch each hole one at a time. This is a 1.5 millimeter hole punch. I've got my punch board. It's a piece of about 3/4 inch nylon cutting board that I use. It's easy on the tools. You can see I have to empty out my little pouch that I've got that collects the holes so they don't just go everywhere. And then I also punch out the holes where a D-ring is going to be sewn on. So there's a D-ring holder, and it's got 2 parts, an interior and an exterior. Next, we're going to use your sharp knife. I prefer a utility knife, and I usually sharpen it with some diamond sharpening stones that I've bought. They're actually metal plates, even though they're called stones. And that helps the knife be extra sharp. And at this point, we're cutting right on the black line. We don't want to cut on either side of it. We want to cut right on it. And that will give us the right shape. So at this point, you might want to clean up the edges depending on how well your blade did. You might trim it a little bit or sand it a little bit. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how I punch and cut the straps. So here's the strap. Remember, we cut it to width using the strap cutter. So now I'm going to tape it directly onto my punch board. The other piece I didn't tape down, but this strap piece I'm going to tape down. And I'm going to use my 3mm punch and some shaped punches to get the shapes on either end. And then I punch the rivet holes and then the belt strap holes. And that's how you cut a strap. Okay, so this is all the different, well, not all of them. This is some of the different pieces of the veg tan that I'm using. These are some ring holders, and the other parts are the closure to the main bag. They're a lip that we sew onto the main bag closure to give it extra stability and strength. And I'm just using an antiquing gel that gives it some depth of color and variety, kind of gives it an antique look. And we're going to do that to all the veg tan pieces. So now we're going to start by sewing on this D-ring holder. And we're going to use a standard saddle stitch technique. And we're going to begin by sewing the interior part. So to give this extra strength, we've actually got two portions of the end of the bag that are sewn. So instead of just overlapping and sewing through all the 3 layers at once, we're sewing a small layer, and then we're sewing a larger outer layer, and that will just distribute the pulling force on that D-ring strap holder to a wider area and across more stitch holes of the end of the bag. I use a lighter to burn the edges after I back sew a couple of stitches. You can also use a stitch burner, a thread burner. I like to use those sometimes. And this is the same. We're just going to do a standard saddle stitch all the way around. And so you can't even see with the interior stitching on the outside of the bag at all. But on the inside you can see that it has got 2 different stitch patterns to hold that D-ring holder on. And then I back stitch 2 to 3 stitches to hold the thread in place. And then I cut the thread, leaving about 1/8 of an inch, extending above the surface of the leather. And I use my lighter to melt the thread. And it needs to be a propane style lighter. It cannot be a liquid fuel lighter. Those don't get hot enough to melt the thread, I found. They'd be a little more convenient, but they don't work. So it has to be a compressed propane style lighter. Okay, so that's one end of the bag. Both ends of the bag are identical. So what you're going to do is do that exact same thing on the next one. Now I'm going to use my computer and my laser burner to etch a pattern onto the main panel of the bag. This bag was designed by my daughter. It was for her. She was the team captain of her 2024 mountain bike team. And her team took unofficial state championship in their year. It was unofficial because there was a giant snowstorm that hampered the race. So due to race rules, they couldn't be named official state champions, but they were unofficial state champions. So I create this little image that I want to be etched into the main panel of the bag. I'm going to export it into a format that the laser printer can read, the laser etcher can read. I add it to the laser etch program. And then I put the leather inside. I've already got that piece cut and punched. And I line it up where I want it to, and I hit go, and the laser burns in that shape that you saw on the screen. This is obviously not required, it's optional, but if you really get into leather work, this is a tool you can use. So there's the second bag end, and the D-ring and the D-ring holder, and there I am finishing it off. You didn't need to see me do it twice. So we have both round ends of the bag complete with their D-ring holders that will hold the shoulder strap. That's what the other sides look like. Next, we're going to install a zipper on this interior pocket of the bag. So there's a helmet pocket, and on part of the helmet pocket on the interior of the bag will be this pocket. This is a great place that someone can put their keys or their phone or their wallet, and it stays zipped inside the bag, but you don't have to rummage around in the bottom of the bag looking for your important items. So I'm going to use this metal snipper to cut the zipper after measuring it to length. It's a strong, tough zipper. And so that's what it's going to go in, like that. And so to reduce fraying, I'm going to burn those raw edges with the lighter, just like we do with the threads. And that will seal off the individual threads and reduce fraying. Found another long thread there we burned off. Okay, now I'm going to use some glue. This is a Weldwood contact cement, and this is the non-volatile version. So it's a water base. It doesn't use mineral spirits as the binder, so it takes quite a bit longer to dry, but it doesn't have that strong smell, and it doesn't have toxic chemicals. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this on the inside of the pocket. Not much. I like to use this little squeeze bottle, almost like it was mayonnaise or salad dressing, but don't eat it. And then because it's completely non-toxic and it comes off pretty easily, I'm just going to use my finger, spread it around a little bit. I did put a glove on. So in order for this to work, it either has to dry for quite a while, or I like to apply heat. This is just a heat gun. I apply some heat. It evaporates the water, which is the binder. And once the glue is tacky and sticky, then it's ready to go. And you can stick the zipper to it. There's other methods to hold a zipper in place. One of them is glue like this. Another is to use basting tape. If you're into sewing, you may be familiar with that, but basting tape is readily available. Or you can use stitches, actual thread, to baste it in place. And we will use basting with thread in another part of this pattern. Okay, that's sufficiently dry. Make sure that you've inserted your zipper pull. If you don't at this point, you won't be able to get it in. So make sure you've added your zipper pull and your zipper, and stick it down. I've left it so it's not instantly sticking. It's still a little wet, so that I can make sure that it's adjusted and centered perfectly. Once I flip it over, I can see where it's sitting. And then we're going to let that dry for a time. I'm putting pressure to adhere the glue to the leather very well. And I'm going to apply heat to speed up the glue drying. You don't have to add heat, and if you're using a different kind of glue, this would be unnecessary. Once it's completed and it's dried, that's what it looks like on the back side. We're going to use our heavy thread again and use the same saddle stitching technique to sew around completely on this zipper. So I prefer not to punch any holes in the zipper edge, because if you do that, you're actually cutting the threads that this is woven together with. So it is a little more difficult than sewing through two pieces of leather that have identical holes punched in them, but it helps the zipper stay strong. I like to begin items of the bag that will be under stress, like a zipper or a joint, something that's sewn together, with a double stitch. So you can see I've got a stitch there in place, and now I'm going to add another stitch over it, and that just gives it some additional strength at the beginning of the thread. Once that first stitch is in, we proceed with a standard saddle stitch. There's lots of different ways to saddle stitch. I like to put both needles through at the same time so that I don't snag the thread, but some people don't like that. There's different ways to do it if you're an expert in a different way. use your preferred method. So we go around and we complete that little oval, sewing it all in, and then I back stitch about 3 stitches again. Pull it snug, and trim and burn the thread ends. And so it functions well, opens and closes. The next step is to sew the pocket onto the interior partition. So this is the interior partition. We've punched it, and I'm just pointing out where the marks are. You're going to want to use those marks that were on the pattern to line up the holes. Once those holes are lined up, then you can be assured that when you sew it together, it won't be crooked and it will line up with the holes properly. So those are the 2 holes marked on the pattern. And once again, this is a standard saddle stitch. I'm doing a double stitch on the first stitch, get some extra strength. And from there, it's a standard saddle stitch all the way around. One thing you may notice if you've looked closely, that I lock my needles onto the thread. I do that once you thread the needle, then you take a section of the thread behind the needle and poke it using the sharp point of the needle through the thread and pull it back, and then you do that twice, and that's called locking the needle, and that just helps hold the needle in place when you're hand sewing like this. There's other techniques, but I prefer to lock the needle in. Okay, that's what it looks like when it's all sewn in. You've got your pocket. You can put your special important small items that you don't want in the bottom of the bag. The next one is the helmet pocket zipper. So one of the large pockets is for I designed it for a helmet, and it's got a zipper that's nearly 50% the whole width of the bag, so that you can easily open it and fit your helmet inside. So it's the same technique as we did before, but this time I want 2 zipper pulls. I want to be able to open and close it from either side. And we're going to let that dry for a while. Now this is the main compartment of the bag, and it's got a section that's cut open, but we need to install the zippers, and to install the zippers properly, we need to hold that in place. So what I'm going to do, and I've used a white thread because this isn't permanent, is I'm going to do something called basting. And basting is using some thread, and you make extra large stitches, and you just go through a stitch line like this, and it will hold this piece closed while we install the zippers that go in those oval holes. Because the zippers are one of the means of closure of this large compartment opening. So I'm just going back and forth in an X pattern with the basting thread, and it's just standard leather thread, and I'm just using white so that it stands out and I know that it's not a permanent feature. And I don't need to go through each stitch hole. I can skip about every 2 to 3 holes and go back and forth in an X pattern. So it's important to pull the stitches snug, but not too tight. We just want everything to line up and stay in place. That's the whole point of the basting. And I'm just using my awl to pull on the stitches a little bit and pull out any slack. And I'm making sure that each stitch that I put the needle through is directly parallel right across from the corresponding stitch, and that just helps hold the closure closed better. And then it's all lined up. Okay, now that I'm finished basting that stitch line, I'm not going to do a permanent knot. I'm not going to use the thread burner or the lighter. So one final check and make sure that all the slack's taken out and that everything's lined up. And then I'm just going to tie a basic bow, like your shoes. Cut off the excess, and that will help it hold in place. So the next step is to add the zippers. So we've got 2 zippers cut to length. And like before, we're going to use glue to hold them in place. Like I said, there's other techniques, and I discovered that after using this glue, I wasn't happy with how well it was holding, because we have that front edge that, although it's basted in place, it's not as strong as if it was a whole piece of leather. And so I'm going to also demonstrate that you can baste in the zipper, and then you can go ahead and sew it in. So I'm going to initially start with the glue. That wasn't working for me real well. Trying not to be too messy with the glue here. I don't want to get it everywhere. I'm kind of a messy person, so I tend to. It's hard to do fine work when you've got giant sausage fingers like I do. I'm going to wipe up the glue. I don't want it to get on the front of the bag. And apply heat again till the glue is tacky and I can attach the zipper. So you stick the zippers down, make sure the zipper pull is in the right position. This particular type of glue I use, it's important to apply pressure, which is why I'm pushing on it. And as you can see, the glue didn't work right. I got too impatient or something and started too fast. But it's still fairly tacky, so I can use the glue to line the zipper up. And this particular glue does come off pretty well before it's completely cured. I can just rub it and it kind of comes off. So the front of my bag is not ruined. I'll just have to do some cleaning. But I line the zipper up and make sure that it's lined up properly in the opening. Do that with both sides. And I'm pulling the zipper pull all as far forward as is practical, because that will help line the zipper up better as it glues and dries. I'm going to use this marble roller that I have. If you've got something like that, it can help add pressure to that glue. As you can tell, I'm kind of worried about that glue holding on, so I'm adding some additional pressure. But we'll come to find out later, that didn't work great. But the glue did work fine on this one. We're going to let that dry for a while and get back to the zipper on the helmet pocket closure. So just like all the other zippers so far, this is a standard saddle stitch, and I do it identically to the way we've sewn every other zipper so far. And it's impossible to have one piece of thread go all the way around a zipper this long. You're going to have to start and stop with different pieces of thread. I only use about an arm's length of thread on each side, so that's a double arm's length plus a little bit extra to lock the thread in. And then you probably need to do that twice for a piece for a zipper this long. And we cut and burn. Now we have a nice long zipper. Next, we're just going to join the piece at either end. And this is going to be an overlapping saddle stitch. So one seam line overlaps the other. It makes a very strong stitch rather than a butt stitch with an X pattern. So this is my standard method of saddle stitching. I start by inserting the needles in the second hole from the edge, and then from the first hole from the edge to complete the first stitch, and then go back to the second hole from the edge to get that double stitch. And then it's a standard saddle stitch technique all the way to the end. And I backstitch 3 stitches, trim and burn the thread. That stitch line is complete. So now we're going to sew the interior pocket to the exterior part of the helmet pocket. So there's the I was demonstrating how there's the 2 locations where they match up. You don't have to guess. You can start each hole correctly and get the pocket lined up so that it's not turned or rotated in any way to the other parts of the bag. I always find the first couple of stitches to be the hardest. It's important not to tangle the thread and to get a first good clean stitch. And then once you got 2 or 3 stitches in, it goes quite a bit faster. So there I've got the second stitch in, and from here I find it proceeds along quite a bit faster. Okay, I'm just demonstrating how I've also got it marked at the bottom. So where that bottom stitch is should line up perfectly with the stitch line. And that's marked on the pattern. So if you get there and the area you've marked hits right up with the stitch line, and you got it. Then you keep going. Here's the last couple of stitches, and we've added 2 pieces perpendicular to each other. So even though the leather's fairly soft, it's giving it some shape now. And I've opened the zipper. It gives me easier access with my hands to both sides. Okay, now we've got the interior panel with the interior pocket complete. And that's sewn to the helmet pocket. Okay, we're going to set that piece aside for now, and we're going to return to sewing the zipper. See how that's cut right there? We don't want to sew across that. This zipper needs to open. So it's not going to be sewn across. So we're going to start right here. We're not going to sew across that cut. And that's the reason we basted that in place, so that it will hold the zipper while we sew it. And then once we remove the basting, then that zipper and that whole panel can open. Once again, I'm starting my double stitch. We've got 2 stitches to hold the end of the zipper in place. Okay, I'm getting frustrated because my glue's not holding well. I did something wrong. I like that the glue that I use doesn't have the volatile chemicals, but it's not quite as sticky, not quite as convenient as maybe a standard leather cement, but it doesn't stink as bad. But I'm getting a little frustrated here because it's not holding on like I like. Okay, at that point I just got 3 stitches going, and it took quite a while. So what I went ahead and did is I basted using basting stitches. You can see they're big wide stitches. I don't go through every hole, and I sewed the zipper in place so it will stay where I want it to, and I can go ahead and sew using the colored thread into the regular stitches. And as you go, I remove the threads. I just trim them, pull them out with the basting thread, and I continue the standard saddle stitch method. But the basting stitches just hold it in place better when the glue wasn't working right. So that's just another technique. I used that for both sides. And so now you can see this is how the panel opens once it's all sewn in and all the basting stitches are removed. And that grants easy access to the main compartment of the bag. You can unzip it. You've got a great big opening. The next step will be the handles. These handles go on either side of the main opening, and I've used heavy veg tan leather for the handle strap, and then we're going to sew a cover over that strap that holds it all together. And you can see there's lots of holes. And you would have done this already. We've punched lots of holes in this strap. So the first thing we're going to do is sew down the side of the strap on the outside. I'm starting on the second hole from the edge of the stitch line like I usually do to give it that double stitch. Pull both sides of the thread even. This initial stitch I'm threading fairly loose just because we're going through 4 different layers on the stitch, and it's just a little easier to do fairly loose, and then we'll pull it snug once we've got all the threads in the right place. So the handle is on the outer side, going around like a burrito. Sorry, I put it closer up to my eyes there and pulled it out of the view of the camera. Okay, now once we pulled that tight, you can see how it goes on either side of the overlapping strap handle. So the strap handle is folded over itself to hold that square ring in place. And the handle cover wraps around both sides. And so the first stitch, once again, I'm doing a double stitch to make it extra strong because the handle is a place that could have great stress on it. So I pull that first stitch really tight. And then from there, we proceed with a standard saddle stitch all the way down the side of the handle. So it does take some attention to detail to make sure you line up the holes with each stitch, because there's 4 layers to go through. And once again, the first 2 to 3 stitches are the hardest, but once you've got those in, it usually gets quite a bit easier. And I'm pulling these stitches pretty snug because of the stiffness of the veg tan leather on the inside of the handle. Before we get too far, we've got to make sure we get the square ring on the other end, because as we go sewing, we'll end up closing that handle together. And that will be sewn down. Okay, we got one side completely sewn down. We trim the ends and burn the threads, like always. And you can see how that closes that handle and locks those 2 D-rings in place. The next step will be to sew down the other side of the handle. You can see we have a stitch line to do that. And then you might be wondering, what are we going to do with all those holes in the middle? We'll get there. We'll show you. Okay, so we've got those both sides both stitched down. Now we need to hold that handle cover closed. So we're going to stitch an X pattern, a butt stitch, that will hold that closed. So we're going to go horizontally across the handle strap now, instead of vertically up and down it. For that first stitch, so we're going to start with just a standard kind of saddle stitch for that single stitch at the end. And then from there, we're going to do a X pattern. Okay, so now we've got that single stitch in the top, and we go diagonally down to the next stitch row. It makes a nice little X on one side and just a regular stitch on the other. So for strength and comfort, the butt closure of the handle cover actually is the visible part that's on the outside. And where your hand goes will be the flat part of the handle. And so on one side, it'll look like single stitches horizontally, kind of like a ladder, and on the other side, it'll look like X's. And the X's is what will be on top. And I've kind of got a little OCD, and I try to always make sure that my X's cross the same direction. It's not important, and no one's really going to notice, but I always make sure they always cross the same direction. Okay, there's one handle complete. There's all the parts for the second handle. Here's two handles complete. That's the underside right there that looks like the ladder. And there's the outside that will be visible that holds the butt ends of the handle strap together of the handle cover. And you can see the X's. I'm going to just zoom in so you get a good look. Okay, now that the handles are complete, we're going to attach the handles, one on either side of the main body compartment opening. And so we've got heavy-duty ring holders made out of our veg tan leather. We punched and dyed before. And those are going to hold our handles in place on the bag. They are riveted and then sewn. This will be one of the most stressed locations of the bag, which is why we're doing riveting and sewing. The rivets actually are kind of a sewing aid. They help hold it all in place while you sew. And we also have a reinforcement piece. This reinforcement piece will just double the thickness of the leather where we're going to rivet and sew the handles in. And it's kind of a belt and suspenders. I was just concerned because we're using a thin, flexible leather for this bag. I didn't want the handles to tear through. That's going to be one of the main stress points. So I put a reinforcement piece on the bottom. And then we've got the two layers of the ring holder. And I'm just using snap rivets, so they'll snap on and hopefully hold in place. You can see that's a pretty stiff piece of leather, so the first one got popped off. I'm holding it on, and I'm going just to use a rivet press. There's other methods you can use to set rivets. There's hand setting rivets. You can use a tool to do, but I do a lot of rivets, so I bought a rivet press. And just snug those into place. And I'm going to check that they are set. Okay, they are holding well. Oh, I'm going to set that one rivet a little better. Okay. Use that reinforcement piece on the bottom again. My sausage fingers at work. Sorry for the delay. And we're going to make sure we've got all four pieces of leather that we're going through. You can't see quite as well because now the camera's covering it, but I'm putting those rivet caps on top. Okay, I attached the first set of rivets with the rivet press. This time I'm going to demonstrate using a rivet setter. And so I'm going to use an anvil, just a little workshop anvil I have. And I use the bottom part of the rivet set up against the anvil. And then the top part of the rivet set, you hammer it 3 or 4 times, make sure it's snug. Now set the second rivet. Okay, now the rivets are set on both handles. We're going to sew. It might be a little hard to see because the handle's in the way, but it's not too hard to get to because the handles are flexible. You can bend them and move them out of the way. There's about 8 stitches, 10 stitches that we're just going to go around the rivets as an additional method of securing the handle in place. And that, along with the reinforcement piece underneath, should give this a lot of strength. It should never tear out. Speed up that stitching, but it's a standard saddle stitch around. You can see I pull out the needle nose pliers on occasion, pulling through 4 layers. Sometimes I can't pull it all the way through. I use a set pair of needle nose pliers to be able to grip the needles. Don't grip them too hard because that'll break the needle. I have done that before, but it'll help you pull it through when it's a bit of a struggle. Okay, we made that all the way through. We're going to trim and burn the threads. And that's what it looks like. Riveted and stitched. You just need to do that to the remaining 3 handles. Okay, we did that off camera. That's complete. Just for your information, we've used this bag quite a bit, and those handles do great. Now we're going to sew on the reinforcement piece to the lip of the main compartment. This is just a stiffer piece of Veg-tan leather that gives that main compartment some stiffness so that when you open and close it, it holds its shape a little better and it's a bit stronger. It also provides a little bit of overlap so that when the bag is closed, it's overlapped. We're going to add some straps so that when the bag is fully closed, it's zipped and strapped at that main compartment and it won't come open. So once again, this piece is like a taco. It's a binding edge. It goes over the edge of the main compartment and we sew it back and forth. So this time we're sewing through 3 layers of leather, and it's a standard saddle stitch. And I've gone ahead and I've folded the piece of leather in half before I started. You can see, so to give it a bit of a crease so that I don't have to crease it as I go along. It kind of already is in the taco shape. And it does so right up to the zipper. And so it gets a stitch or two into the side of the zipper as well, and that kind of helps reinforce the zipper on that side. Back stitch at 3 stitches, burn the thread, just push it down in. That's one side. Now here's the second piece. I'm going to fold it into a taco. This is a pretty stiff, strong piece of leather, so it takes a little bit of effort to fold. I go back and forth a few times. I've sealed it, so getting it wet won't help. We're going to open the zippers all the way so that we can get good access to the next side. Got my 2 needles, my thread cutters, about the length of thread measured out off camera. I'm locking in my needles. Sorry, that's off camera. Second needle. Okay, ready to start. Starting in the second hole from the edge again. Gone through the 3 layers. I pull both sides of the thread to equal length. Pull that first stitch nice and snug because that's a firm piece of leather. This is my double stitch again. Something I like to do when there's a pretty significant stress point at the beginning of a stitch line. There's that double layer stitch. Now let's proceed, and the rest of this is a standard saddle stitch like we do with a lot of the rest of this pattern. Okay, that's finished. Both sides you can see that that closure overlaps a bit once it's closed and zipped up. It's got a nice firm edge. The next step is to add the buckles and straps that will hold that closed. So we've got buckle holders on one side and straps on the other. And like the handle, they have a rivet. This time it's just a single rivet, and then they're sewn around the edge. The rivet helps hold everything in place while you sew. We've got a crossbar center buckle. Okay, and you'll notice that I did not rivet down those rivets yet. It's just the snap of the top of the rivet holding it in place. And I'm going to go ahead and sew. These aren't quite as firm and difficult to deal with as the handles were. So we're not going to rivet that in place until we've sewn it. We get that first couple difficult stitches done. We're not using a reinforcement piece on the bottom like we did with the handles. This shouldn't have nearly as much stress as the handles. It's merely a closure. It doesn't carry the whole weight of the bag. So we sew around those couple of stitches. And now I'm going to set that rivet. Use my manual rivet setter. A couple of good whacks with the mallet. Go ahead and we set all those buckles now. Riveted and sewn. Now we're going to set the straps. It's the same method and technique, except it's a single piece of leather. You don't have to fold it over. Thread my needles and sew the straps the same way we sewed the buckle holders. And when those are sewed in, we will set the rivets. Okay, that one's complete. I popped the top of the rivet off, snapped it back in place. This time I'm going to use the rivet setter that I have. Set that rivet. Okay, now that we've done that for all three straps, so this is how you close the main compartment. You zip both sides, and then you do up the buckles. I find my daughter only does up the straps only when she's really taking this from one place to another, when she's at the race venue, when she's mountain bike racing. She'll leave the straps undone so she can have quick access to the main compartment, but she zips it up and it stays closed pretty well. but with those straps it stays really closed. The next step is to add 2 side pockets. These side pockets are for gear that you need to access quickly or want to get to without digging into the main compartment. The first step is to sew the sides of the pocket onto the body of the bag. Use the standard saddle stitch technique. And I'm sewing these the side of the pocket so that the edge will be on the inside of the pocket, not on the outside. Get those first 3 stitches in, and then it all becomes quite a bit easier. Once you sew around those 2 corners, the pocket really starts to take shape. Okay, that side of the pocket is sewn on. Next, we're going to sew on the top flap. Notice the orientation I've chosen to sew it down. And we'll keep the edge of the top flap on the inside of the pocket, that bottom edge. This is a standard saddle stitch again, following the same techniques that I've done throughout. Here's the view of the back side. You can see the sides and the top of the pocket now sewn on. Now we sew on the front of the pocket. And the way I sew this one on, notice the orientation. The exterior edge of the front of the pocket will be on the outside now. And the top edge of the pocket side will be on the inside when the pocket's all sewn. So you'll be able to see the stitch. Those other two stitches will only be visible from the inside, but this stitch will be on the outside. Fast forward, you can see how I reach my hand on the inside of the pocket. It's a good sized pocket, and I've got big meaty hands. Hopefully your hand should fit in and you should be able to sew okay, if I can do it. Okay, that's one pocket sewn. Now I'm going to add a tuck closure. You can use different types of closures, but I like this closure. It opens quickly, and it's a pretty snug and secure closure. And the tuck closure you may buy might be attached a different way, but this one has kind of a connector that pokes through the leather. That's why I marked it and punched a little bit of some holes. Then you push that through. And it's got these little ears that you fold over. And I'm just going to use a pair of needle nose pliers to fold those over and crimp them snugly. If you selected a chrome piece, you might want to use a piece of fabric between the needle nose pliers and the tuck clasp, but this is an antique leather, or an antique brass piece. It doesn't scratch so easily. And then I connect the bottom piece, and I use that while it's connected to mark the location, because it's got two prongs on the ears, two kind of pointy spots on the ears that hold it in place. So I'm going to set the closure where I want it, push it down. It makes little marks. I'm going to accentuate those marks. First, I'm going to make sure that they're centered. I want to make sure that they're nice and centered. So I'm using my ruler, and then I'm going to use my scratch awl to accentuate those marks. And then I'm just going to push through with the leather with the scratch awl. And that little hole should be enough to get it started, and I can push those little ears through. And there's a back plate that you put on, and then you bend the ears down. Like I said, the type of closure you purchase may be different, but this type of tuck clasp is pretty common. And I'm just going to use the top end of my rivet setter to push those down a little bit more. So those are set nice and snug. One pocket is done. That tuck clasp opens and closes easily. Provides quick access to something outside the bag. Second pocket done. It's identical to the first. This is the top of the main compartment of the bag. It's now complete. This is the back of the main compartment of the bag. And we're going to sew on these D-ring holders in the same manner that we did with the side. These D-ring holders will be attached to the backpack straps. So this bag can double as a sling bag over your shoulder or a backpack. The reason I wanted to do that is sometimes it's really convenient to drop and pick up a bag with a shoulder strap. You're not carrying it very far. But sometimes at like a mountain bike race that my daughter does, the venue can be quite a ways from where you park the car. And a shoulder strap with all your gear inside can get kind of heavy and awkward. And so then you can pull out the backpack straps and throw it on your back and carry it like a backpack. So this sews down identically to the way we did the D-ring holders on the sides of the bag. That will hold the shoulder strap. It's got an inside portion and an outside portion, and that really increases tear resistance by increasing the number of stitches in the surface area that the stitches are held to. Start with my double stitch right at the top of the holder. And then continue the rest of the way around. Okay, that's how to attach the D-ring holders. Do it 3 more times. Okay, now they're all attached. The portion where the D-ring holders are closer together, that's the top of the bag, where your shoulders would be. And the part where the D-ring holders are further away is the bottom of the bag where your waist would be. Now this is a backpack strap cover. So this will cover the backpack straps. You can put them away under this cover so that the bottom of the bag doesn't have backpack straps hanging off of it. They're under this cover. So when you're done with the backpack straps or you're not using them, you put it underneath this cover. And we're going to fold over the top and the bottom of the cover to give it a little bit of structure and just sew it down. This is the same the same manner of saddle stitching. A note on saddle stitching: if you haven't had a lot of practice at it, you've probably done a lot by now. But as you'll notice, this is a good view. You can see how I always put the needles in through the same location. So that back needle, and then that front needle, and the front needle always goes closer to me. The back needle goes further from me. And I do that every time. So the needles have traded places, but that back needle goes further from me, and that front needle goes closer to me. And if you do that every time, it makes a really consistent saddle stitch, and it makes a neater stitch line. If you're alternating it, the stitch line can look a little messy. So on this side of it, I'm demonstrating how I use some stitch holders. These stitch holders are little pins that have a loop on one end, a circle, and a pin holder on the other. You can see the bottom. And they'll just hold that folded down for me while I stitch. I use these stitch holders to hold things in place sometimes, to hold two seam lines together, and they're pretty handy. They're available in lots of places on the internet. Okay, we completed both the top and the bottom of the backpack strap cover. The next thing to do is attach the backpack strap cover to the bottom side of the main compartment of the bag. So that's where we have the D-rings already sewn in. And we're going to sew this in place. I'm going to use my stitch holders to help hold it in place. The backpack strap cover is a little wider than the stitch holes. I left some room for the backpack straps so they could fit in there without pulling the leather too tight. So we put those those stitch holders in, and then as we start stitching, we get close to one, we remove it, pull it out, and then we keep going. So we've finished both sides, we stitched both in place. You can see there's a little bit of a bulge in there because it's a bit wider to allow room for the backpack straps. So that's where the bottom towards where the waist would be. This is the top to where your shoulders would be. The next step is to attach the bottom and the top of the main compartment together. Now that we've got them both completed, we can sew them. Note the orientation. I'm going to use my stitch holders again. This makes it convenient. So I've got the shoulder straps towards the top of the screen there, and the bottom D-ring holders where the waist would be towards the bottom of the screen. So I use my stitch holders, and in this case I'm putting the top of the bag over the bottom of the bag, so in terms of edges. And I'm going to do the same thing, so that top is going to go over the edge of the bottom when it's sewn down on both sides. See that? So the top goes over the bottom. Same method, I'm going to use my stitch holders, just helps hold it in place when I get started. So I start sewing the same manner as before. We do a double first stitch, and I'm going to sew a saddle stitch all the way down the line. This one you will have to end up putting the bottom hand inside the bag. I'm left-handed, as you might have noticed, so you may be putting your right hand inside, or your left hand inside the bag, if you're doing it the same way I do it, but reversed. So now it's all sewn together. That's the main compartment of the bag. Now we just have to sew the ends on. Okay, I prefer to keep the pattern, and the pattern can help remind you where you marked. Hopefully you marked where those stitches are. If not, you can line the pattern up and you can show where each one of those important holes is, where you're going to line it up. And the reason you want to line it up carefully is so that that D-ring holder is in the right location. If you get it off center, it might not look great, and it'll be crooked to the shoulder strap once you put the shoulder strap on. So I've lined up the two correct holes. And this is essentially the same way that we sewed the other round internal pocket panel onto the helmet pocket. This is the same way, just that the main pocket is a little bit deeper than the helmet pocket. So we get that started with our double stitch. I've got to keep track of my thread there. If you get tangled up sometimes and you have to unsew it a little bit, that happens to me too. I just don't save that part and put it in the video for you to see. Carefully go hole by hole, making that you get each hole lined up, that you don't skip a hole. We've got those first 5 or 6 stitches in place, and then from there it really speeds up. Okay, so now I've opened the side of the bag after I've got 15 stitches done there. I've opened that main compartment so that I get easier access, and it's giving it a little bit of shape, so it's holding itself in place a little better, and it makes it easier to sew. We sewed all the way around now. We've got the last 8 to 10 stitches there, and with the main compartment of the bag open, it's easy access. Easy to get to that stitch. Finish that off, and that side of the bag is complete. Okay, the next step is to use this connector strap. This connector strap connects the main body of the bag to the helmet pocket of the bag. And so first we're going to sew it together. Notice that the stitch line overlaps. This is not a butt stitch. This is a saddle stitch where the 2 stitch lines overlap. Standard saddle stitching. Okay, this connector strap is ready to go. Okay, we're going to use the pattern again where we've marked where the 2 holes with the connector strap and the main body of the bag connect. I've marked those 2 holes. It might not be visible on camera. This is a fairly easy stitch line to do. It's just sewing 2 circles together. They overlap in the saddle stitch. I'm putting the connector strip on the outside, and the main body of the bag goes underneath. Okay, we stitched that big circle. I had pretty easy access. Okay, the next part is attaching the pocket, the helmet pocket, onto the bag. And take note of the locations. Hopefully you mark those in advance, but that's just a reminder of which holes line up where. You don't want to get the interior pocket looking crooked or the D-ring on the outside crooked where that will hold the shoulder strap. Okay, so this gets kind of pushed inside that connector strap, and it lines up to that second stitch line on the helmet pocket. And it's important to do it in this step so that you have the right access. If you do it in a different way, it could be a little bit harder to get to. But we have the side of the pocket of the helmet pocket still open, so it's fairly easy access. So once again, this is going to be a saddle stitch in a circle, and we're putting the helmet pocket on the inside, and this connector strap will be on the outside. And it sews the exact same way that you just sewed it to the main compartment of the bag. Got my double stitch. And I find this one's actually a little bit easier because the bag is starting to hold its own shape now. So everything's a little bit easier to access. It keeps slipping on me a little bit. I could have used some stitch holders to hold it in place. If you wanted to do that, that would maybe make it a little bit easier if it's slipping around, but I didn't at this point. So it's not apparent from this camera angle, but I've got a fairly good view of the inside of the bag. So where I'm putting my hand in, the stitches are, I can see that pretty well because the bag is a circle. Okay, so we've got it sewn most of the way through. We've just got our last few stitches. It's holding its shape really well now that we have that other vertical panel that's got a pocket in it inside there and sewn together. It's holding that cylinder shape really well. And clearly there was something about that stitch I didn't like. I don't know if I snagged the thread or something, but I took it out. That happens from time to time. Don't worry about it. You might have to unstitch several portions. The autofocus is getting my hand there instead of the bag a couple of times. Time to back stitch a couple of stitches. Okay, I back stitched 3 stitches. That makes a nice secure hold. And then burning the thread on each side and pushing down the little bubble. That kind of makes a squished shape on each side. It's mushroomed inside the stitch hole, and that really prevents the thread from coming loose. Can't see it so well there. It's inside the bag, but I'm cutting and burning that same thread. I think my flint on my lighter was wearing out there. Okay, now the 2 pockets of the bag are connected. The helmet pocket on the left, you can see, it's got the interior partition, back side of the interior pocket, and the main compartment on the right. Okay, pull the pattern out one last time for the bag. Point out where the holes line up. Okay, getting those 2 marked holes. This is the last part of the bag we're sewing together, and everything else from here on out will be straps. So you've already sewn 2 of these circle-shaped pieces into the bag. This is essentially the same. All right, we sped through that stitching. You've seen that several times already, but I wanted to show how to get to the back side of this. Once we get it enclosed, we just unzip the pocket. We can stick our hand right inside and have pretty easy access to the last little bit of stitching. Okay, the bag is complete. Next, we're going to move to the backpack straps. This is the strap, and we're going to rivet on a scissor clasp swivel hook. You can use any swivel hook you like. I really like a scissor clasp swivel hook. Scissor clasp swivel hook. Say that 3 times fast. It holds really well onto the D-ring, and it swivels around so it doesn't tie the strap up. Two rivets. Quite adjustable there, depending on height. That's the top of the backpack strap. And we're going to rivet to it a swivel hook as well. See how the backpack strap's a touch longer? That way the swivel hook doesn't dig into your shoulder as you're wearing it. Rivet those two pieces in place. Notice how I didn't design in any sewing in this part of the strap because it's both pieces are the heavy veg tan leather, and rivets will do plenty to hold. In fact, the leather will probably tear before the rivet breaks. And since that's a really good strong piece of leather, it should never tear. So the next thing we're going to work on is this little piece here that's called a strap keeper. And the strap keeper goes on with the buckle, and that it helps keep the strap in place after you've buckled it, hence the name the strap keeper. It's got 4 holes. You do 2 little stitches in it with a cross, kind of an X in the back. I do a double stitch on each stitch, just for added strength. Nothing should really ever pull on the strap keeper, but you never know. Then I just tie a basic square knot. And I'm just going to burn the ends of that a little bit so that it is less likely to come untied. It's a good strong square knot, but it shouldn't come untied now. The next step is to insert the buckle into the buckle holder. We're going to rivet that in place. Make sure that you slide on that strap keeper before you attach the rivets. Pounding out rivets can be a real pain. So I riveted the buckle in place. Now to rivet the buckle holder to the upper portion of the backpack strap. Okay, the next step is to add foam. You can use a scrap piece of paper, and I'm just going to use a spray adhesive. You can use any adhesive you'd like, even double stick tape if you want, but I find the spray adhesive just helps hold the foam in place nicely while I sew the strap cover to the backpack strap. So I'm going to let that dry until it's tacky. You didn't notice, but through the magic of film, I sped that up, cut some time out. That's dried quite a bit, and I just stick it right on there to the back side of the backpack strap. And I'm going to sew this cover over it. This cover does nothing structural, but it does protect the foam, and I find the foam to be more comfortable than just a straight leather strap on my shoulders. You can see the type of foam I used in the material list, but you could probably use any kind of foam or quilting that you could find. Sorry, sometimes when I need to look at something close up, I have to pull it away from the camera and put it closer to my eyes. I do wear reading glasses. Still, I need to make sure I get holes lined up real well sometimes. This is a standard saddle stitch. We're just going to speed up the process. Once again, we're stitching both sides, and we stitch down the top and the bottom as well, just to protect that foam. This is how the bottom of the strap goes on. Slides into the buckle. Slide that extra piece into the strap keeper, and that's a backpack strap. And of course, we do it twice for both shoulders. Let me demonstrate how the straps attach. I'll squish the bag down so that I can get it into the camera. So the scissor clip swivel hook attaches to the D-ring on the top and the bottom. Note the orientation. So the helmet pocket is towards the top. That's where the D-hooks are narrower. The bottom is where the D-hooks are wider. That's your waist. And you can sling that over your shoulders and carry that bag. And once you're done with the backpack straps, you slide it underneath the backpack strap cover and reconnect the swivel hooks, and it keeps them out of the way. The next step is the strap keepers for the shoulder strap. So these are the same kind of strap keepers. They're a different length because the shoulder strap is wider. And there's two of them that are associated with the shoulder strap. We need to make those first. Let's double stitch those. You do a square knot, tie the thread off, trim that, leave the tails, and we're going to burn those tails down. That way they're much less likely to be able to come untied. Do the same thing. The second one, and notice how I kind of shape them with my fingers after they're done. This is the strap. One of the strap keepers I want to rivet into place. And so we're going to go next to where we sewed the two ends together. And we're going to make I'm making a 3mm hole to fit the rivet. So now it's got a hole in it. And I'm going to rivet it right there. And that just keeps that particular strap keeper from sliding around. Put that rivet in my rivet press. Snug it down tightly. That strap keeper will stay in that location. Now it's time to add the buckle. So slide in the second strap keeper first and lock that in with the buckle so it gets riveted in right next to the buckle so it won't move either. But that second strap keeper can help you tuck in any extra length of the shoulder strap that's not being used. Set those two rivets in place. The next portion, of course, is another swivel hook. I told you I like these scissor swivel hooks. And we rivet that in place as well. Okay, that's the buckle portion of the shoulder strap complete. And that clips to one end, one D-hook end of the bag. The next portion of the shoulder strap is the adjustable portion, and it connects into the buckle. So it's long. I'll try and show you all of it there. It's got one end where the swivel hook will connect, and the other end where it attaches to the buckle and has all the different holes, so it can be adjusted depending on your height. We're going to use two rivets once again to attach this swivel hook. And there's one more portion, and that is the shoulder strap pad. Because this is a large bag and it can get heavy, I included a pad to add to the shoulder strap for comfort. It's the same technique as adding the padding to the backpack strap. I'm going to use some spray adhesive. This is a good spray adhesive, but it drives me crazy because I always have to clean out the nozzle. It gums itself up, even though I try and make sure it's clear after I use it. But I guess that just means it's a good adhesive and doing a good job. Okay, after that's dried for a while, let's glue it to the bottom of the pad. The top is the one that has the holes in it for slots. That's where we thread the backpack strap through. Okay, we let that dry for a bit. It's nice and glued down, and we're going to saddle stitch all around the edge. This is the same technique of saddle stitching we've done throughout, and if you follow the order I've made the bag, this will be your last saddle stitch for this bag. You've done maybe 20-25 stitches, right? That's probably it. And there's me struggling with the first couple of stitches like always until I get it just right. Okay, off camera I completed this using a stitching horse where I could clamp it. And that just made it easier for me. Now we're going to thread the shoulder strap into the pad. The pad is nothing structural in the bag, it's just a cushion for your shoulder so that strap doesn't dig into your shoulder as you're hefting this bag. That part of the strap buckles together like that. Tuck that into the strap keepers. And then attach it to the D-rings on either end of the bag. The shoulder strap is done. Now you are complete. You have finished the bag.